In this episode of True Crimes Unfold, we dive deeper into the tragic 2021 murder of transgender mayor in the Philippines, highlighting the brutality of the crime and the systemic challenges faced by the LGBTQ plus community in some regions of the world. Please note that events and scenarios in this video may be graphic for some viewers. Discretion is advised. Details of the videos are taken from actual case files. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what type of cases you'd like us to cover next, and we'll make sure to add them to our list. Don't forget to subscribe to get new stories as soon as they're released. Settle in, get ready, and let's begin. The morning of May 20th, 2021 began like any other in Quezon City, Philippines. The bustling streets were alive with the sounds of tricycles and market vendors, an everyday rhythm that locals knew well. Yet, in a quiet corner of Barangay Greater Lagro, something sinister shattered the routine. A passerby walking along a patch of open land noticed something unusual. A disturbing odor and a shape obscured by tall grass. Curiosity turned to horror as they moved closer, revealing a body wrapped in plastic discarded like trash. It was a scene that would haunt the community and draw the attention of the entire nation. The authorities were called immediately. Crime scene investigators cordoned off the area, their faces grim as they uncovered the victim's identity. 21-year-old Ebeng Mayor. The young transgender man had been missing for 3 days, his family frantically searching for him after he failed to return home. The discovery of his body was the tragic answer to their worst fears. To those who knew him, Ebeng was more than just another face in the crowd. Born and raised in Quezon City, he was known for his vibrant personality, infectious laughter, and an ability to bring light to even the darkest days. Friends described him as fiercely loyal and kind, someone who never hesitated to stand up for others. Ebeng's family, devastated by the loss, spoke about his dreams and the challenges he faced as a transgender man in a society that often marginalized people like him. Despite the difficulties, Ebeng was resilient. He had ambitions, plans for the future, and a close-knit group of friends who cherished him deeply. His disappearance, followed by the discovery of his body, left a void that could never be filled. News of the discovery spread quickly through Barangay Greater Lagro and beyond. The community, already grappling with the pandemic's challenges, was now faced with the horror of a brutal murder. Fear and grief rippled through the neighborhood, turning shock into outrage. Vigils were held in Ebeng's honor, with candles illuminating tear-streaked faces as mourners demanded justice. The crime scene itself told a story of unspeakable violence. Police reports revealed that Ebeng had suffered extensive injuries, suggesting a prolonged and brutal attack. The nature of the crime was particularly disturbing, raising questions about whether it was motivated by hatred, personal vendetta, or something even darker. As the investigation began, activists and advocates for the LGBTQ plus community pointed out the broader implications of Ebeng's murder. It wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a reflection of systemic challenges faced by transgender individuals in the Philippines. Discrimination, stigma, and a lack of legal protections made them particularly vulnerable to violence. The case reignited debates about the country's need for stronger anti-discrimination laws. Despite years of advocacy, the SOGI, Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Expression, Equality Bill had yet to be passed, leaving many in the LGBTQ plus community without the legal safeguards they desperately needed. Ebeng's death became a rallying cry, a painful reminder of the urgency for change. The Quezon City Police Department, QCPD, vowed to bring the perpetrators to justice. Investigators combed through the crime scene, collecting evidence and interviewing potential witnesses. Ebeng's family and friends were also questioned, their grief palpable as they recounted his last known movements. It didn't take long for leads to emerge. Witnesses reported seeing Ebeng with a group of individuals shortly before his disappearance. Among them were acquaintances he had trusted, people he had considered friends. This revelation added another layer of heartbreak to an already devastating case. As the investigation progressed, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. But the path to justice would not be easy, as the community and the nation braced themselves for the grim details that would soon come to light. The murder of Ebeng Mayor was not just a tragedy. It was a mirror reflecting the deep-seated issues of prejudice and violence that needed to be confronted. In this story of loss, outrage, and resilience, the fight for justice was only just beginning. The murder of Ebeng Mayor was more than a senseless act of violence. It was a crime that exposed the darkest corners of prejudice and betrayal. As the Quezon City Police Department, QCPD, delved deeper into the investigation, the horrifying details of the case began to emerge, leaving the community reeling. The investigation revealed that Ebeng's final hours were spent in the company of people he trusted. On the evening of May 17th, 2021, Ebeng was seen with 3 individuals, friends he had known for some time. Witnesses reported that the group had been drinking and talking late into the night. It was the kind of gathering Ebeng often enjoyed, a moment to relax and share stories. But something went horribly wrong. As the night progressed, tensions began to rise. Investigators pieced together a narrative suggesting that Ebeng may have become a target of ridicule or violence due to his gender identity. While the exact trigger for the attack remains unclear, the evidence pointed to a brutal escalation that culminated in Ebeng's murder. The autopsy report painted a grim picture of Ebeng's final moments. He had suffered extensive injuries, including blunt force trauma and signs of strangulation. The level of violence used was shocking, indicative of deep-seated anger or hatred. The manner in which his body was discarded, wrapped in plastic and abandoned, added another layer of dehumanization to the crime. For Ebeng's family, the details were almost too much to bear. His mother, speaking through tears, described him as a kind and loving person who didn't deserve such a fate. He trusted those people, she said. They were supposed to be his friends. Through witness testimonies and forensic evidence, the police were able to identify 3 suspects, 2 men and 1 woman, all of whom were known to Ebeng. The revelation that the suspects were individuals he considered friends sent shockwaves through the community. How could people so close to him betray his trust so completely? The suspects were quickly apprehended, and during questioning, the true extent of their betrayal came to light. One of the men, under intense interrogation, confessed to his role in the crime. He admitted that the group had conspired against Ebeng, though he tried to shift blame to his accomplices. His confession was corroborated by physical evidence, including traces of Ebeng's blood found on clothing and in a vehicle used to transport his body. The other suspects, while initially denying involvement, eventually admitted their roles as well. Their motives, while not fully articulated, hinted at a combination of personal animosity and deep-seated prejudice. The case exposed the dangerous intersection of trust and betrayal, where even close relationships could be weaponized by bias and hatred. While the QCPD worked diligently to solve the case, the investigation highlighted systemic issues that often hinder justice in cases involving LGBTQ victims. Activists pointed out that crimes against transgender individuals were frequently mishandled or overlooked due to societal biases. Ebeng's case, they argued, was a rare exception in receiving significant attention, thanks to the public outcry and media coverage. The lack of specific protections for LGBTQ individuals under Philippine law further complicated the pursuit of justice. While the country had laws against murder, there were no provisions addressing hate crimes or violence motivated by gender identity. This gap left many activists calling for urgent legislative action, emphasizing that Ebeng's death must not be in vain. As news of the suspect's arrest spread, the community's initial shock turned into anger and determination. Vigils and protests were organized to demand accountability and highlight the systemic issues faced by transgender individuals. Advocacy groups, both local and national, amplified the case, using it as a rallying cry for the long-delayed passage of the SOGIE Equality Bill. One advocate put it succinctly, "Ebeng's murder is not an isolated case. It's part of a pattern of violence and discrimination that we must confront. We owe it to him and to every victim who has suffered in silence." The prosecution, armed with the suspect's confessions and forensic evidence, began preparing for trial. The evidence against the suspects was overwhelming, but the case also posed significant challenges. The defense attempted to downplay the role of bias in the crime, framing it as a personal conflict rather than a hate-motivated act. This strategy angered activists who saw it as an attempt to erase the systemic issues underlying the case. To counter this narrative, the prosecution emphasized the brutality of the crime and the trust Ebeng had placed in his killers. They called on expert witnesses to discuss the prevalence of violence against transgender individuals, framing the murder within a broader context of societal prejudice. As the investigation moved toward trial, the people of Quezon City rallied around Ebeng's family. Fundraisers were organized to support them during this difficult time, and messages of solidarity poured in from across the country. Ebeng's story resonated with many, not just because of its tragedy, but because it illuminated the broader struggles faced by marginalized communities. The case also became a lightning rod for change. LGBTQ organizations intensified their advocacy efforts, calling for systemic reforms to address the root causes of violence and discrimination. For them, Ebeng's murder was a stark reminder of the work that still needed to be done. As the suspects prepared to face trial, the weight of their betrayal loomed large. They had not only taken a life, but also shattered the trust of a community that had once welcomed them. For Ebeng's family and friends, the pursuit of justice was about more than punishment. It was about honoring his memory and ensuring that his death would not be forgotten. The crime and its investigation revealed the darkest aspects of humanity, but also the resilience of a community united in its grief and determination. In the face of tragedy, they found strength, demanding justice not just for Ebeng, but for all those who had been silenced by violence and prejudice. The trial of the three individuals accused of murdering Ebeng Mayor began amidst a media frenzy. The courtroom was packed with journalists, activists, and members of the LGBTQ community, all of whom were determined to see justice served. For Ebeng's family and friends, the proceedings were both an opportunity to confront the individuals responsible for their loss and a painful reminder of the betrayal that had taken their loved one away. The prosecution wasted no time presenting a compelling narrative of trust betrayed and a life cut short. Building their case on the confessions of the accused, forensic evidence, and witness testimonies, they painted a harrowing picture of the events that led to Ebeng's murder. The prosecutors began by recounting the timeline of Ebeng's final hours. They detailed how the three suspects had lured Ebeng into their company under the guise of friendship, only to turn on him in a brutal and premeditated attack. Photographs of the crime scene and forensic reports corroborated their narrative, showing the extent of the violence inflicted on Ebeng. Key witnesses, including neighbors and passers-by, testified about seeing the suspects with Ebeng on the night of his disappearance. Their accounts, coupled with surveillance footage from nearby establishments, placed the accused at the scene and further strengthened the prosecution's argument. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when the prosecution called Ebeng's mother to the stand. Her tearful testimony about her son's life and the devastation his murder had caused left the courtroom silent. "He was my light," she said, her voice trembling. "They took him from us, and our lives will never be the same." The defense faced an uphill battle, given the weight of the evidence against their clients. Their strategy focused on shifting blame and attempting to downplay the severity of the crime. They argued that the murder was not premeditated, but rather the result of a spontaneous altercation fueled by alcohol and personal disagreements. In an effort to diminish the hate crime element of the case, the defense sought to frame the attack as a personal conflict rather than an act motivated by Ebeng's gender identity. This tactic was met with outrage from activists and LGBTQ advocates, who saw it as an attempt to erase the systemic issues underlying the crime. The defense also highlighted Shu Lixia's complex role in the crime, portraying her as a vulnerable individual coerced into participation by the other suspects. While this argument resonated with some, it did little to absolve her of responsibility in the eyes of the court. The trial's most revealing moments came during the testimonies of the accused. Under questioning, their accounts of the night of the murder were inconsistent, with each suspect attempting to minimize their own involvement while implicating the others. Their lack of remorse and the casual way they described the events angered both the prosecution and the audience. Forensic experts presented detailed reports on the evidence collected at the crime scene, including traces of Ebeng's blood found on clothing and in a vehicle used by the suspects. These findings were pivotal in tying the accused to the crime and dismantling the defense's narrative of a spontaneous altercation. Throughout the trial, LQB plus advocates worked tirelessly to highlight the broader implications of the case. They organized protests and vigils outside the courthouse, calling for justice not only for Ebeng, but for all victims of hate-fueled violence. The case became a focal point for renewed efforts to pass the long-delayed SOGIE Equality Bill, which would provide legal protections for LGBTQ plus individuals in the Philippines. Activists also demanded that the court formally recognize the murder as a hate crime, arguing that Ebeng's gender identity was a significant factor in his death. Their efforts underscore the importance of framing the case within the context of systemic discrimination and violence against the LGBTQ plus community. After weeks of emotional testimonies, expert evidence, and legal arguments, the trial reached its conclusion. The jury deliberated for several days before returning a unanimous verdict: guilty on all charges. The court found the three accused guilty of murder, ruling that the evidence demonstrated clear intent and premeditation. The judge, in delivering the sentence, condemned the brutality of the crime and the betrayal of trust that had enabled it. This was not just a murder, he said. It was an assault on humanity, trust, and the dignity of a young man who deserved to live a full and meaningful life. The accused was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. For Ebeng's family, the verdict provided a measure of closure, but could never undo the pain of their loss. "We are glad they were held accountable," his mother said outside the courthouse. "But no sentence will bring my child back." The trial's conclusion was not the end of the story. For activists and advocates, it marked the beginning of a renewed fight for systemic reform. The case became a rallying cry for the LGBTQ plus community, spurring advocacy efforts to address the root causes of violence and discrimination. Advocates pushed for the passage of the SOGIE Equality Bill, arguing that Ebeng's murder underscored the urgent need for legal protections. "This case shows us why we need stronger laws," one activist said. "Ebeng's death was preventable, and we must ensure no one else suffers the same fate." The trial also inspired broader discussions about the role of education in combating prejudice. Schools and community organizations began implementing programs aimed at fostering acceptance and understanding of LGBTQ plus individuals, recognizing the importance of addressing discrimination at its roots. For Ebeng's family, the trial was both a painful and empowering experience. They had faced the individuals who took their loved one from them and seen justice served. But their journey didn't end with a verdict. Determined to honor Ebeng's memory, they became advocates for change, speaking out about the challenges faced by LGBTQ plus individuals and the importance of creating a more inclusive society. "We want Ebeng to be remembered not just for how he died, but for how he lived," his mother said. "He was kind, strong, and full of life, and we will keep fighting to make sure his story brings about the change he deserved." As the trial ended, the LQB plus community and its allies vowed to continue their fight for justice and equality. Ebeng's story, though tragic, became a symbol of resilience and hope, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, change is possible. The case of Ebeng Mayor is not just about one life lost. It's about a community's resolve to ensure that no one else suffers the same fate, and a nation's reckoning with its responsibility to protect all its citizens, regardless of who they are or whom they love. The conviction and sentencing of Ebeng Mayor's killers marked a significant step toward justice. But the aftermath of the case extended far beyond the courtroom. For Ebeng's family, friends, and the broader LGBTQ community, the fight was far from over. The grief of his loss became a rallying cry for systemic change, advocacy, and the preservation of his memory. For Ebeng's family, the trial's conclusion brought a mix of relief and sorrow. While the conviction of the perpetrators provided a sense of justice, the void left by Ebeng's absence remained immeasurable. His mother, who had been a vocal advocate for justice throughout the trial, spoke candidly about the struggles of moving forward. "It's a pain that never really goes away," she said. "But we want to use our grief to help others, to ensure this doesn't happen again." In the weeks following the trial, the family began organizing memorial events to honor Ebeng's life. These gatherings celebrated his kindness, resilience, and dreams, painting a vivid picture of a young man whose life had touched so many. At one such event, friends shared stories of Ebeng's generosity and humor, emphasizing the joy he brought to those around him. "He was the glue that held us together," one friend said. "And even now, he's bringing people together." Ebeng's murder sent shockwaves through Quezon City and beyond, igniting conversations about the safety and rights of LGBTQ+ individuals. For the local LGBTQ+ community, his death was a painful reminder of the dangers they face daily. However, it also galvanized them into action, uniting them in their fight for equality and protection. Local advocacy groups, many of which had already been pushing for the passage of the SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, equality bill, redoubled their efforts. They organized marches, vigils, and educational workshops, using Ebeng's story to highlight the urgent need for legislative change. The hashtag #Justice for Ebeng Mayor trended across social media platforms, amplifying the voices of those demanding accountability and reform. The community also launched initiatives to support LGBTQ+ individuals at risk. Hotlines, counseling services, and safe spaces were established, providing much-needed resources for those facing discrimination or violence. These efforts were a testament to the resilience and solidarity of the LGBTQ+ community, ensuring that Ebeng's legacy would be one of empowerment and hope. The impact of Ebeng's case extended far beyond the borders of the Philippines. International human rights organizations took note, calling attention to the systemic issues that contributed to his death. Reports highlighted the prevalence of violence against LGBTQ+ individuals in the Philippines, emphasizing the urgent need for comprehensive legal protections. The case also sparked global solidarity, with LGBTQ+ communities worldwide expressing their support for Ebeng's family and the fight for justice. Vigils were held in cities as far away as New York, London, and Sydney, where activists drew parallels between Ebeng's story and similar cases of violence and discrimination in their own countries. What happened to Ebeng is not just a Filipino issue, one activist said at a vigil in Los Angeles. "It's a human rights issue, and it affects all of us." At the heart of the advocacy efforts was the push for the long-delayed SOGIE Equality Bill. First introduced over 2 decades ago, the bill aimed to protect LGBTQ plus individuals from discrimination in employment, education, healthcare, and other areas. Despite widespread support from human rights organizations, the bill faced significant opposition from conservative lawmakers and religious groups. Ebeng's murder reignited the urgency for its passage, with activists using his story as a powerful example of the bill's necessity. Advocacy groups organized petitions, lobbying campaigns, and public forums to educate lawmakers and the public about the importance of the legislation. The SOGI Equality Bill isn't just about rights, one advocate explained. It's about saving lives. It's about making sure no one else has to endure what Ebeng did. While the bill's passage remained uncertain, the momentum generated by the case was undeniable. More Filipinos than ever before were engaging in conversations about LGBTQ plus rights, challenging stereotypes, and advocating for inclusivity. Ebeng's story inspired a wave of artistic and media projects aimed at raising awareness and fostering empathy. Documentaries, short films, and theatrical performances explored his life, the circumstances of his death, and the systemic issues faced by the LGBTQ community. These projects not only honored Ebeng's memory, but also served as tools for education and advocacy. Social media became a particularly powerful platform for sharing Ebeng's story. Artists created illustrations and animations celebrating his life and calling for justice. Writers penned essays and poems reflecting on his legacy. These creative expressions brought new audiences into the conversation, ensuring that Ebeng's story continued to resonate with people from all walks of life. While the pain of losing Ebeng could never be erased, his family and community found solace in the positive changes inspired by his story. The initiatives launched in his name, from support services to educational programs, had a tangible impact on the lives of LGBTQ individuals. His legacy became a symbol of resilience and hope, reminding people of the importance of standing up against injustice. One of the most poignant tributes came from his mother, who established the Ebeng Mayor Foundation to support marginalized individuals in Quezon City. The foundation provided scholarships, legal aid, and mental health services, ensuring that Ebeng's memory would continue to make a difference. "This is what Ebeng would have wanted," his mother said at the foundation's launch. "To help people, to make the world a little kinder." Despite the progress inspired by Ebeng's story, challenges remained. The SOGI Equality Bill still faced significant hurdles, and many LGBTQ individuals continued to experience discrimination and violence. Advocacy groups emphasized the need for sustained action, reminding the public that systemic change required persistence and collective effort. For Ebeng's family, the journey toward healing was ongoing. They continued to share his story, speaking at schools, community events, and conferences to raise awareness about the importance of acceptance and equality. "We want people to remember him, not just for how he died, but for how he lived," his sister said. "He was brave, kind, and full of love. And that's the legacy we want to carry forward." The aftermath of Ebeng's murder revealed the strength and resilience of the LGBTQ community and its allies. Together, they turned tragedy into a catalyst for change, using their grief to fuel a movement for justice and equality. Ebeng's story became a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable loss, progress was possible. As Quezon City continued to heal, the memory of Ebeng Mayor remained a beacon of hope. His life, though tragically cut short, inspired a legacy of courage, compassion, and the unwavering fight for a better world. The story of Ebeng Mayor is one of tragedy, resilience, and the enduring fight for justice. As his family, community, and advocates around the world continue to honor his memory, the broader implications of his death began to resonate. Ebeng's life and untimely passing shone a harsh light on the systemic issues faced by LGBTQ individuals, not only in the Philippines, but globally. His story became a catalyst for reflection, change, and a powerful call to action. The murder of Ebeng Mayor sparked international outrage and solidarity. Activists and advocacy groups worldwide rallied around his story, using it to highlight the pervasive violence faced by LGBTQ individuals. Social media became a critical tool for spreading awareness, with the hashtag Rabide Ashbish Quatish Just Justice for Ebeng Mayor trending not only in the Philippines, but also in countries like the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Global organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch issued statements condemning the violence and calling for systemic reforms. Ebeng's story is tragically not unique, one report read. His death reflects a broader pattern of violence and discrimination against LGBTQ individuals, exacerbated by a lack of legal protections and societal acceptance. In response, international communities organized vigils and events to honor Ebeng's life. LGBTQ leaders in cities like New York, Berlin, and Tokyo drew parallels between his case and similar incidents in their own countries, emphasizing the shared struggle for safety, equality, and dignity. In the Philippines, Ebeng's murder became a rallying cry for the passage of the long-delayed SOGIE Equality Bill. Advocates argued that his death underscored the urgent need for comprehensive legal protections for LGBTQ individuals. The bill, which sought to address discrimination in employment, education, healthcare, and other areas, had been stalled in Congress for years due to opposition from conservative lawmakers and religious groups. Ebeng's case reignited the debate, with advocates organizing nationwide campaigns to push for the bill's passage. Public forums, media interviews, and grassroots initiatives aim to educate the public and lawmakers about the importance of the legislation. This isn't just about rights, one advocate explained. It's about creating a society where people like Ebeng can live without fear. While the bill's passage remained uncertain, the momentum generated by the case was undeniable. Public opinion began to shift, with more Filipinos expressing support for LGBTQ rights. The advocacy efforts also inspired younger generations to get involved, ensuring that the fight for equality would continue. For the LGBTQ community in Quezon City and beyond, the aftermath of Ebeng's death was a time of both mourning and empowerment. Support groups and counseling services were established to help individuals cope with the trauma of his loss. These initiatives created safe spaces for LGBTQ individuals to share their experiences, find solidarity, and begin the healing process. One of the most significant outcomes was the establishment of the Ebeng Mayor Foundation, TAS Swing, which aimed to support marginalized individuals in Quezon City. The foundation provided scholarships, legal aid, and mental health resources, ensuring that Ebeng's legacy would continue to make a positive impact. This foundation is for him, his mother said at its launch. It's for everyone who feels like they don't have a voice. The foundation also partnered with schools and community organizations to deliver educational programs on acceptance, diversity, and LGBTQ rights. These efforts sought to address the root causes of discrimination and foster a culture of inclusion. Ebeng's story inspired a wave of creative expressions that amplified his memory and the issues surrounding his death. Documentaries, short films, and theatrical performances delved into his life, the circumstances of his murder, and the broader struggles faced by LGBTQ individuals. These projects not only honored Ebeng, but also served as tools for education and advocacy. Social media platforms became a hub for storytelling and artistic tributes. Illustrators and graphic designers created portraits of Ebeng, accompanied by messages of hope and resilience. Writers penned essays, poems, and opinion pieces reflecting on his legacy and the need for systemic change. These creative works brought new audiences into the conversation and ensured that Ebeng's story continued to resonate. Ebeng's death served as a wake-up call, not just for the Philippines, but for societies worldwide. His story highlighted the importance of addressing the systemic factors that perpetuate violence and discrimination against LGBTQ individuals. Activists and leaders used his case to push for several critical reforms. Stronger legal protections, advocacy groups called for the passage of comprehensive anti-discrimination laws to safeguard LGBTQ individuals from violence and prejudice. Education and awareness. Schools and community organizations were urged to implement programs that promote acceptance and understanding of diversity. Mental health support. Recognizing the unique challenges faced by LGBTQ individuals, advocates emphasize the need for accessible mental health resources and support systems. Community accountability. Local leaders were encouraged to create safe spaces and mechanisms for addressing hate crimes and discrimination at the grassroots level. For Ebeng's family, preserving his memory became a mission. They continued to speak out about his life, dreams, and the challenges he faced, ensuring that his story would inspire change. He was more than what happened to him, his sister said. He was kind, brave, and full of life. And we want the world to remember that. The legacy of Ebeng Mayor extended far beyond his community. His story became a symbol of resilience, hope, and the enduring fight for justice. It reminded people of the importance of standing up against hatred and working toward a society where everyone can live with dignity and respect. While progress had been made, challenges remained. The Soji Equality Bill still faced significant opposition, and many LGBTQ individuals continued to experience discrimination and violence. Advocacy groups emphasized the need for sustained action, urging people to remain vigilant and engaged. Ebeng's case also underscored the importance of allyship. Support from non-LGBTQ individuals played a crucial role in amplifying the movement for equality. and ensuring that the fight for justice reached a broader audience. The story of Ebeng Mayor is a reminder of the work that still needs to be done. It challenges us to confront prejudice, advocate for systemic change, and stand in solidarity with marginalized communities. As we honor his memory, we must also commit to building a world where everyone, regardless of their identity, can live free from fear and violence. Ebeng's life, though tragically cut short, continues to inspire a movement for justice and equality. His legacy reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable loss, hope can endure, and change is always possible. As the dust settled on the tragedy of Ebeng Mayor, the efforts to honor his legacy and address the systemic issues that led to his death continue to grow. For his family, friends, and the LGBTQ community, the story was far from over. It became a beacon for justice, a call for equality, and a roadmap for building a more inclusive and compassionate future. For Ebeng's family, life without him was an endless journey through grief. Yet amidst their sorrow, they found strength in their advocacy. His mother, who had become a public figure in the fight for LGBTQ rights, spoke at schools, conferences, and rallies. Ebeng wanted to make the world a better place, she said during one speech. And now, it's our responsibility to carry that dream forward. The Ebeng Mayor Foundation became a focal point of their efforts. Through scholarships, mental health support, and legal aid, the foundation ensured that Ebeng's name would always be associated with empowerment and hope. His siblings, inspired by their mother's resilience, also joined the cause, working to dismantle stereotypes and educate others about the struggles faced by LGBTQ individuals. Ebeng's death highlighted the need for stronger, more unified advocacy efforts across the Philippines. LGBTQ organizations, once working independently, began forming coalitions to amplify their impact. These alliances allowed them to pool resources, share strategies, and present a united front in the fight for equality. One of the most significant outcomes of these efforts was the launch of the Rainbow Justice Network, I-SWING, a nationwide initiative that provided legal support to victims of LGBTQ related violence and discrimination. The network also trained local leaders and law enforcement on handling hate crimes, ensuring that cases like Ebeng's would be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly. The network's work extended beyond advocacy, delving into grassroots community building. Workshops, support groups, and safe spaces were established in rural and urban areas alike, giving LGBTQ individuals across the country access to resources and solidarity. We're not just fighting for laws, one activist explained. We're fighting for a society that values and protects every life. The renewed momentum around the SOGI Equality Bill was one of the most visible legacies of Ebeng's story. Advocacy groups intensified their lobbying efforts, and public support for the bill grew steadily. Polls showed a significant shift in attitudes, with more Filipinos expressing support for LGBTQ rights than ever before. However, progress was not without its challenges. Conservative lawmakers and religious groups continued to resist the bill, using rhetoric that dismissed or marginalized LGBTQ voices. This opposition underscored the long road ahead, but also strengthened the resolve of advocates. Every step forward matters, said one campaign leader. We owe it to people like Ebeng to keep fighting, no matter how hard it gets. Ebeng's story reached beyond the Philippines, becoming a touch point for international LGBTQ+ movements. Organizations around the world incorporated his narrative into their advocacy, drawing parallels to similar struggles in their own countries. In Southeast Asia, where LGBTQ+ rights faced similar barriers, his case became a rallying cry for regional solidarity. Global leaders in the LGBTQ+ movement recognized the power of Ebeng's story in bridging cultural divides. His life and death reminded people everywhere of the shared humanity that transcends borders and identities. Vigils held in his honor from Sydney to New York reflected a growing recognition that the fight for equality was universal. Art became one of the most powerful tools for ensuring that Ebeng's story would not be forgotten. Filmmakers, playwrights, and musicians drew inspiration from his life, using their mediums to spark conversations and challenge biases. Documentaries chronicled his journey, not just as a victim, but as a vibrant and beloved member of his community. One of the most impactful works was a short film titled Light in the Shadows. The film, which premiered at an international LGBTQ+ film festival. The film portrayed Ebeng's life with warmth and humanity, juxtaposing his joy and struggles with the broader challenges faced by LGBTQ+ individuals in the Philippines. Its director described it as a love letter to Ebeng and to everyone who continues to fight for their place in the world. Social media also played a significant role in spreading his legacy. Artists created portraits and digital illustrations of Ebeng, accompanied by messages of resilience and calls to action. These posts, shared thousands of times, ensured that his story reached new audiences and inspired ongoing advocacy. Ebeng's story became a symbol of empowerment for LGBTQ+ youth across the Philippines. His courage in living authentically, despite societal challenges, resonated deeply with those navigating their own journeys of self-acceptance. Support groups and mentorship programs established in his name provided safe spaces for young people to explore their identities and find community. One such program, the Ebeng Legacy Project, logically paired LGBTQ+ youth with mentors who had experienced similar challenges. The project's goal was to create a generation of leaders who could carry forward the fight for equality. "We want them to know they are not alone," said one mentor. "Ebeng's story reminds us all that we're stronger together." As the years passed, the changes sparked by Ebeng's story began to take root. Schools implemented anti-bullying programs that addressed LGBTQ+ issues. Communities embraced pride events that celebrated diversity and inclusion. And while the legal battle for the SOGI Equality Bill continued, its advocates remained undeterred. For Ebeng's family, each step forward was a reminder of his enduring impact. His mother, speaking at an event commemorating his life, reflected on the journey they had undertaken. "It's been hard," she said, "but through all the pain, we've seen the good that can come from standing up, speaking out, and refusing to let hate win." Ebeng's story is a reminder that change begins with action, no matter how small. His life and legacy challenge us to confront prejudice, amplify marginalized voices, and build a world where everyone can live with dignity and safety. Whether through advocacy, education, or simple acts of kindness, we all have a role to play in creating that future. The story of Ebeng Mayor is not just about one life lost. It is about the countless lives his legacy will continue to touch. It is a call to honor his memory by fighting for a world where no one has to endure the pain of discrimination or violence. As we reflect on Ebeng's life, let us commit to the work ahead. His legacy is a testament to the power of community, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring belief that love and justice will always prevail.